I have family and friends that are alcoholic, and my name's Linda Conway.
I'm Mike Conway. I'm an alcoholic. So much for the honesty.
And we've never done a joint one before, and so this is a challenge because we both love to talk about recovery. So he's agreed to let me go first. I think he wants the rebuttal, really, is what the thing is. Okay. So, I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm 54 years old. I'm one of those people that am not concerned about my age. I'm just glad every day when I wake up that it's a new day. I was always told you either get older or you get dead, so I'm okay with getting older. I grew up in a strict religious home. When the church doors were open, we were there from the time I was like 2 weeks old on. It was never a discussion because that's just the way it was. And there were some things that happened in my family as I grew up. I had a sister that was 15 that had a baby out of wedlock. And we're talking 30-some years ago. And at that time, if you were pregnant, you couldn't go to school. You had to, if you wanted to continue your education, you went away to a home for unwed mothers. And that certainly changed the outlook of our entire family, how things were, what special things we were allowed to do, the attention that she got versus the rest of us kids, and I was the baby. And so, a lot of those dynamics happened in our life. And I think because of some of those things, I learned to be that caretaker. My sister would wake up in the middle of the night and be crying about, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get married? I've had this baby out of wedlock. Isn't that a weird concept in today's world? But she was very concerned about it back then. And so, she'd wake me up to go get Mom, and Mom would come and console her. All those things, I picked up those traits to be that caretaker. So when I got married, I had first of all, my parents had been married like almost 60 years when my mother died back in the year 2000. So, I wasn't from the broken home, or all that stuff. But my parents never fought as far as I knew. I had absolutely no relationship skills because I never saw them work anything out. They never screamed or yelled or really disagreed in front of us kids. Now, as an adult, I realized that wasn't the reality. Obviously, they had lots of those things, but it was always behind closed doors. So when I got married, I had absolutely no idea how to handle relationships. I really had no clue. When my ex-husband would get angry, I had no clue what to do. And I was sure that somehow it had to be partly my fault because my dad never acted like that. So what was it that I wasn't doing right? When we first got married, we weren't going to have children, and after we were married for like 7 years, I really wanted kids. We ended up having 2 sons, and he traveled 4 or 5 days a week. And during that time, I was probably the most lonely that I've ever been. There was a next-door neighbor. I was a stay-at-home mom, very lucky, very blessed to be that. But I had a next-door neighbor, and she was also a stay-at-home mom, and so I would hang out with her sometimes. And at 1 o'clock, the world stopped because Days of Our Lives was on. And so, I really got sick watching that stuff. I wanted my life to be that romantic. I wanted the excitement. I wanted the drama. I wanted the romance and all the package deal, and I didn't have any of that. And so I was a huge flirt. I love to flirt. It's just so much fun, and I'm really good at it. But what I found out is that eventually somebody will take you up on it. And so, some of those behaviors that I got into were just totally outside of the person that I really wanted to be. It isn't just alcoholics that go against their morals, values, and beliefs when they're in their disease. So do we. And so some of the things that I had gotten myself into, I was like, this is not who I want to be, but I had no idea how to get out of that. And so I ended up divorcing my first husband. He was just sure that he could forgive me, and I was just sure that he couldn't because I couldn't. I knew that was not the way I should be behaving, what I should be doing, and so we split. And what was really what was really showing about that is then I was out on my own, and I had my 2 boys, and for me, sleep was a great escape. I don't like alcohol. To me, it kind of tastes nasty, so unless it's a margarita, but that's a whole nother story. So, but sleep for me was a great escape, so I'd put the kids to bed, I'd go to sleep. And I did that for months because I didn't want to think. That racy brain, I was exhausted all the time trying to figure out everything, trying to figure out how I was going to fix everything, and I was just exhausted. And so sleep was a great escape, except, it's not a life. And so I had started working full-time for a landscape company, and there were a lot of single people that worked there, and we would go out to R&R. It was a dance hall, and I loved to dance. And so a bunch of us singles would go out, and so this one night in particular, I was there, and I had a couple drinks, and I was just really making a fool of myself. I was all over this guy, somebody we didn't work with. I invited him to go home with me, and then he said, well, I need to tell you I'm married, and I'm like, I've been there, done that, and I need to tell you I'm not, I'm retracting my offer. Well, the next day, I had gone into the landscape company, and that's where I met Mike, okay? So, the original manuscript for the big book says that in the 12th step, that we carried this message to others, especially alcoholics. The final book says we carried this message to alcoholics in the big book. Well, thankfully, my husband had read the original manuscript, because that morning I went into work. It was a Saturday, but we had some extra stuff that was going on, so I wanted to go in and work on it. And I was shocked that anybody was there, but Mike was there that morning. And so I stuck my head in. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Did you have fun last night? He's like, well, not really. I mean, it was okay. He said, I have something to ask you. And I said, what is that? He said, I just want to know, is the person I saw you being last night who you really want to be? I hated that question. I still hate that question. And I just started crying because I knew I had made a total ass out of myself. I knew, once again, that was not the person I wanted to be. That wasn't in line with my morals, values, and beliefs. It was just trying to fill that God hole one more time. And the only thing that I have found in Al-Anon that fills the God hole is God. But I had tried to use a lot of different things. I had tried shopping, men, food, and all those things are just symptoms of the disease. And the big book talks about that alcohol is just a symptom of the disease. And for the alcoholic, they use alcohol to fill the God hole. And as codependents, we use controlling and manipulating and being in charge. When I feel the most out of control is when I want to be in control. Otherwise I don't feel the need. But anyway, Mike started sharing with me basically a 12-step call at work that day. And he shared with me how he had been an alcoholic and how he had gotten recovery and what he had done and how his life was about dependence on God. And so we probably talked like 3 hours that day. And he said, you might want to try out an Al-Anon meeting. And I thought, well, okay, whatever. So, a couple months go by. And, I'm so glad that they say it doesn't matter why you come to AA or Al-Anon. It just matters why you stay. Because why I came was to win brownie points with him. Okay? I mean, really, that's why I came. I got a babysitter. I went to the meeting. I, couldn't wait to get home to pay the babysitter, get on the phone and say, hey, guess where I went tonight? And he's like, where? And I said, I went to an Al-Anon meeting. Sure that I'd get some major brownie points. And he's like, oh, okay, so how was your day? Now, on his end of the phone, he was doing backflips. I found out later. But he knew that I needed to come for me. And what I found out at that first meeting is that they really understood me. And I was shocked because nowhere in my past had I been involved in alcoholics. I didn't grow up around alcoholics. Really, I married one to get me one, And he was about 5 years sober when I met him. And thankfully, he was really sober, enough that he could share the message of hope, the message of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon with me. And I went to that meeting, and they were talking about being lonely. They were talking about that racy brain that I had all the frickin' time and didn't know how to get rid of other than sleep. They talked about how, we get to a point where we don't know what to do, and so we try to force solutions. We become unreasonable without even knowing it, a lot of times with knowing it. And, they talked about me in that meeting, and really, I was hooked. I was hooked. I wanted to be able to be happy and joyous and free. These people were laughing. They were laughing about things that were kind of, tragic, really. But it was obvious that they had some answers, that they had some hope. And, I wanted some of that. So I've been coming back. I knew that I needed a sponsor. So I got a sponsor. And then Mike and I started dating by this time. And the sponsor that I had was teaching me halt, don't be too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Get to some basic stuff like take care of myself. So instead of going to sleep with the kids, I started doing some healthier things for me. I started finding some things that I enjoyed doing. I started to eat on a regular basis. Really just the things I should have known when I was 10, I started doing again. But he was bringing home people that he sponsored to my apartment sometimes. And so he'd gotten me a big book, and he'd tell these guys, hey, underline this. So, I'm sitting there, I'm underlining this. We're talking about whatever it is in the big book, and I'm listening. And I'm watching these sorry sons of guns that he brings to my apartment, and their lives are changing. They're going from, these sorry-ass people to people that are on fire, are doing things. They're losing jobs and getting jobs and, mending relationships and doing stuff that I was like, my gosh, And what I realized is that my Al-Anon sponsor was giving me this little piece of the pie that was all the external stuff about Al-Anon. All the slogans and all the things that we do on the outside. And what I was missing was the step work that was dealing with the inside stuff. And I wasn't content having the little piece of the pie when I could have the whole pie. Okay, I still wanted the excitement. I still wanted the rush. Well, the whole pie was the rush for me. I didn't want to get the little sliver. Why do I want to just get... One of our friends says, when you come in here, the crap's up to your eyeballs, and you start doing a little bit of things, and the crap gets down to your waist, and you're like, hey, this is so much better. And we stop doing things, and that's kind of where I felt like I was. The crap had gotten to my waist, but I was watching these guys, and their lives were changing because they were working the steps. So I started talking to my sponsor about working the steps, and what I found was, well, she was like, well, you read them, you meditate on them, you think about them. And I knew that wouldn't work. I knew that wouldn't work because I'd been sitting with the big book Nazi, So I knew it wouldn't work. So I had to find a sponsor that would really work with me with the steps. And I was very fortunate. I found a sponsor who was willing to work with me doing the steps with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's how I started in my program. Mike, you can have your part.
Yeah, I think she's great too. Well, the most important part about me, and that's I'm an alcoholic. And just so you kind of know even more about me, I'm a thing that they call double winner. And for those of you that don't know what that means, I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous just shy of 26 years and a little over 20 years in Al-Anon. And I can tell you why that is. Alcoholics Anonymous gave me back my God in my life, and Al-Anon made it really worth living. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like I got the cake, I got the fundamentals, I got the practical stuff, and then Al-Anon gave me the rest of the joy. And I'm so glad that I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had a sponsor that when I told him I thought maybe there's some things I needed to do in Al-Anon, he was not one of these guys that said, oh, where's your 12 steps? He said, what's good for you is good for you, and if that's good for you, then I support it, and I'll be grateful to him forever. I'm an alcoholic, and I just want to say what that is, because there's a lot of folks that, and I believe, I've been here, like I say, just shy of 26 years, I believe there's a lot of alcoholics that die because they don't understand alcoholism. They don't understand alcoholism, that's what kills them. I believe that. And my experience, if I've seen anything, shows that. And so what that simply means is I'm a person that does not have control and choice in drink. If I start, I can't control it. and it's not whether I want to do it or not, I'm going to do it. And that's why it's a progressive, and that's why it's a fatal disease, because I don't have the power not to. Now, we could talk like folks splitting in, and we're not the debating society here. I don't know why that is. It could have come from a dysfunctional home. I could have alcoholism as a genetic predisposition. Jupiter could have been aligned with Mars, and that was why. Because in the Alcoholics Anonymous that I came to, we're not here to talk about how to get how the mule got in the ditch. We're only concerned with how to get it the hell out. And that's the wonderful thing that I think makes us different than therapy and church and other things. We're some folks that have some definite answers about a particular type of thing, and that's alcoholism. And we are, like the book says, uniquely identified to help those people like us. We ought to be. My story is pretty much like any other story you hear. I mean, that's a nice thing, I think, because identification is crucial. I think it's a spiritual thing we have to have in order to, it's kind of like a rite of passage that when we come to Legion, that's what they're for. Every AA meeting, I don't know if you know it, but every AA meeting is so a person without hope can hear a message of hope. And if you're alcoholic and a codependent, that's key. Nothing happens till then. And for me, hopefully people are going to be able to identify with what I say as an alcoholic. Because if you can, then maybe you need to be here. And if you can't, maybe you need to keep on working on what brought you here. And that sounds kind of mean, doesn't it? That's not kind of mean? That's not mean at all. As a matter of fact, the challenge to alcoholics in the big book is a lot rougher than that, let me tell you. Also, I know that from sitting in enough Al-Anon meetings and being an Al-Anon member, card carrying, that you can go on sitting in Al-Anon meetings not doing anything and just suffer until you want to blow your brains out. As a guy that's worked in the field for a long time, I'll tell you, I've taken a lot more people that are codependent, Al-Anons, untreated Al-Anons. I shouldn't say untreated, yeah. People who don't work Al-Anon that need to, I've taken a lot more of them to the nut house than I ever did drunks. Drunks just get her done. They go blotto and then they finish it off. It's a fatal disease. I've found that codependents usually suffer and suffer and suffer. And, sanity is a key. For me, I'm from here. I didn't think that I was different than anybody else, but I am a egotist with an inferiority complex. You know what I mean? The book talks about me. I always feel better than you or worse than you, but I'm never on a plane with you, and I don't identify with anything. I feel lost. I feel frightened from the very start. I don't like me, so I don't think that there's any reason you should. I came up in a situation where there was a lot of fear. There was alcoholism in my home, a frightening existence. And I learned to cope with that in many of the ways that I continue to cope with that as an adult. I evaded responsibility. I lied, and I usually did things like in Fantasy Island. I took myself to different places, whether it be books or who I was going to be or whatever. I didn't realize that was really the root of delusion, and I understand what delusion is. It's me truly believing in a false reality that I create. I create this story and then I believe it. How sick is that? But that was me. Most of what I identify as shortcomings or character defects were learned in my family of origin. And what those were defenses. And the defenses helped me in early life to get through the insanity of what was my life and my family experience. They helped me from getting worse beaten. They helped me from getting in trouble. They helped me, and I used them. And I became very proficient at using them. I would rationalize, justify, lie, put the blame on other people, things like that. Well, the problem is when you leave out of that house where those defenses have worked to help you, they become defects. They don't help anymore. As a matter of fact, they work against you. And mine were. And amazing thing happened, and you might know what it is since I've identified with alcoholism, and I had my first drink. And I'm not like these people that get up to the podium in Alcoholics Anonymous that talk like they're some kind of a wounded victim, and they talk like, I don't know, that alcoholism was a bad thing. My book doesn't say that, and my experience doesn't bear out. I did not drink the quantities that I did for the length that I did because it did not work. It worked for a long time, and it worked fine, and it worked for almost every problem that I thought I had. It took away my fear. It made me feel good. It made me sociable. It allowed me to talk to people. It's the only lubrication that I really needed, and it worked for a long time. The problem is like I told you, I'm alcoholic. And it stopped working, and it started becoming the biggest problem that was a threat to me. Not that other stuff, the stuff that was immediately going to take me off this planet. Now I got a problem. I don't know I got a problem, though, and that's the problem. Remember? You die from alcoholism because you don't understand it. You don't get it, and that was me. Let me ask you a question. How do you solve a problem you don't know you got? I ain't figured that one out yet. I mean, I really haven't. If I self-diagnosed when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I knew what I had, and I believe that I could pull you out enough experience from my life to prove that what I was saying was right. And I'm either a bad guy or I'm a nut. And I can prove that to you. You see, because I don't do nice things. Thank God for Al-Anon. You hate the behavior, not the person. You love the person. And thank God for Al-Anon, because that means that you can detach from them. They don't have to suck your guts dry in the process. You get well. Let them do what God and them need to do. But that was me. I didn't know I had a problem. I didn't want there to be a problem. I didn't want there to be a problem. And in the third chapter, it talks about a guy like me. I'm the guy that wants to be normal. I'm the guy that wants to drink like other people. I'm the guy that wants that not to be the problem. And and you know what? I also know what you think about drunks. I have heard it since I was knee-high. I heard it in my family of origin because, in my family, the women are codependent and the men are drunks and convicts, And the women told me about what it was to be a guy in this family. And I didn't want to be that. Amazing, though, what happened. You know what I mean? So I couldn't get behind it, and I'm not going to get behind it. And I also know something, because my problem's insanity, my problem's not dumb. I know if I admit to you, if you ask me if I'm a drunk, and I admit to you that I am, the next question out of your mouth is, what are you going to do about it? And I don't intend on doing anything about it, you see? Because, see, and the book talks clearly about it. We ought not ask anyone to stop using alcohol unless we have a substitute. And I found a better substitute. But the problem was, I'm still not sure. I'm from Missouri. I'm going to try a little bit harder. And I did that. And every alcoholic in here can identify. I did everything in my power not to come to you. I really did. Went to church, therapy, sold Amway, you name it. I did it, because I don't want to come here. I don't want to affiliate with drunks. I don't want to be a drunk. Look, I already don't like me. I'm not going to finish whatever I got left over by identifying as a drunk. See, I'm that guy that the big book talks about. I have contempt prior to investigation. Before I ever came to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, I knew exactly what you guys did. You're this Mooney cult, and you did these things, and you talked about your sad life and how horrible it was to drink, and I can't get behind that. I did not understand, and I couldn't, and it was God's plan that I come here and I find out we're not like that at all. We're about a dependence on God. We're about service to others. We're about helping the next guy that's dying. The book says that we as alcoholics have the ability to avert suffering and death for others. And it says we're uniquely qualified to do that if we've done what we've done. But it said be careful, because don't try transmitting it if you don't got it. Because today we got a lot of transmitters that don't got it. It's transmitting away. It's unfortunate. So for me, what it was is I had to have a bottom. Because until I had a bottom, I shouldn't say a bottom. I had a lot of bottoms, and those are people that can identify. I had to have my bottom. And what's my bottom? This is another place I guess I take a left turn with some of my Confederates, and that is, I don't think a bottom is measured by external things. I think people get up to these programs and they try to talk about their external circumstances, and that's the qualification that they're drunks. And that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. If that were true, then if you have 5 divorces, 8 ONBIs, and you get beat down 30 times, then you belong. No. Alcoholism is just as simply what I said. It's no respecter of persons. I don't have choice and control whether I drink or not. That's it. I don't have choice or control. And I didn't. So I had my bottom, and my bottom doesn't matter. I'll tell you what it was, though. It's very simple. It's where I wanted to die more than I wanted to live. I will not put a smile on my face, try to act like everything's okay one more day. I will not do that. I would just sooner eat the gun. I will not do this. And I think that that's exactly what was needed for me. I don't know about anybody else. Because, see, my book, and I believe that if I have any small lurking notion that maybe one more cut at the ball will get it, I'm holding on for that one more cut at the ball. I'm going to shoot an angle. But until what the book talks about is that smashed, that belief that I can do anything about it, then I'm not ready. But if I can do that and say, you know what? You got someone to help me? I'm listening. I'll follow you. I became like this mindless robot. And I just followed the people that were in here who I identified with, who, showed me what they were, didn't tell me what they were. I'm insane. I'm not stupid. No, I mean, seriously. Everybody's a good church member in a pew. Everybody's a good AA member in an AA meeting. I want to see what you're doing in your life. I've told people for years, if you want to know if I have a good life, good program, the last guy you want to ask is me. Ask my boss, ask my sponsor, ask my wife. If they give you a good report, I'm probably doing okay. Do not ask me. Remember that arrogant guy? You know, and that brings me to another thing. My problem as an alcoholic is not alcohol. My problem as an alcoholic is selfishness, and the symptom is my use of alcohol. Oh, brought some codependence in there, probably. No, because their symptom is the things that they see, and until they understand the reason they do them is selfishness, they won't get off the dime, I don't think, any more than I would if I didn't get it. My book says selfishness kills me. It never says alcohol will. Oh, isn't that amazing? So now I think I got it because you guys have shared it with me through the big book and your joint experience, and you said you are selfish to the point that you break with anything that's called God, you break with anything that's human relationship, and you're going to die because you cannot bear. Anything living tries to seek relief. Dogs, animals chew off their leg if they're in a leg hold trap, and flowers grow toward the sun, and I believe we're like that too. I have to have something that makes me feel okay. And you know what? This book says it, and I got it. And I got something vastly more than that. A membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a God of my understanding brought to me by you. I have certain spiritual steps that if I will just use the discipline to do them, I get a happy life. I get people in my life, and I'm able to actually relate with other human beings on a way that matters. It matters. Intimacy, I didn't know what intimacy was. Alcoholics Anonymous are taught intimacy. There were people for no outside interest that invested in me, and when I was able, I wanted to invest in them. Wow, that's intimacy, and I cared, because I didn't come here caring about you. I hated your guts. Did I say that, by the way? Well, right? Because I'm scared to death. You're like the other people, all the well-intended people, advice givers that I've heard before. And you aren't. You're people that love me and showed me a different way of life. I got sober in the House of Hope. That was good for me. And I've tried to do everything that I've learned in recovery that you've taught me. I've tried. Don't think I'm perfect. Matter of fact, I'm glad I'm not. I get to keep, the book talks about progress. I want to make progress. I want to be better than I am. And I got a lot of room for growth, let me tell you, because I actually am one of them human beings that does a 10-step. I do that accounting. And I don't like most days what I see. Not to the point that I kick myself in the butt, but I want to improve. And if I don't know where the problems are, I can't fix them. Remember I learned that one early? And that's what I try to do. I am sponsored. I serve. I'm in service. I lead meetings. And it's great. Good. Thank you. Save me. Now, we're actually going to try to share a little bit, if we can do this. It's like, say, this is our maiden voyage here. And we're going to try to tell you why what happened to us happened to us. Cool? You want to start? You want me to start?
Start.
Me start? All right, I get to start. You're not done with me yet. Well, how we got where we got was the steps. That's it. Now, a lot of people in here think if you make enough meetings, it'll magically happen. If you're real nice. Seen a lot of real nice guys. Remember, because some people still suffer from what I suffered from. They thought that they were a bad guy, so if a bad guy gets nice, right, it's presto changeo. In the program of Al-Anon and AA, we have nothing that helps a bad person. We have everything in the world that helps an alcoholic and a codependent person. We don't help bad people get good. That's up to them and God. The first step says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Isn't that amazing? Same word, both programs. And that our lives have become unmanageable. Well, you know what? I understand as an alcoholic. Remember, it was pretty simple. 2 phases. No choice, no control. But what was difficult for me was saying I belong with these older ladies that are complaining about their drunks. Because remember, I figured them out too, right? Before I went. No, what I found out was, and you know, God forbid me, and I'm going to make an amends right here to the Al-Anon ladies here that are members here. I used to be one of those guys that when I led had a less than positive thing to say about enablers. And I'm ashamed of that. And I hope God don't count it against me because I'm trying to make up for it. That's called amends. And how in the world can I blame anybody else for how I did? They were mothers and daughters and fathers and friends who loved me and didn't understand the disease of alcoholism. How in the world can I make that count against them? I didn't understand alcoholism. They just loved me. And thank God. And I don't know that my chief alcoholic, my mother, didn't pray me right here. I don't know. But let me tell you what, being an Al-Anon member, I can now make up for that, and I can tell them, no, that's not what we're about. We're not here to bitch about the drunk. We're here to change. Because you know what? Guess what? I'm Mike. I'm a member of Al-Anon, and I have friends and family that are alcoholic. And now, I'm wanting to do what they did to me. I'm wanting to save them. I think about them. I get racy-brained. And I'm powerless over alcoholism as a codependent. My life becomes unmanageable.
And my life was pretty unmanageable. I told you I was going to bed with the kids every night. What I didn't get is the powerless. I had never even heard of that concept until I came into these rooms. And it was really freeing for me because it meant that I wasn't responsible for all these people that I thought I was responsible for. I didn't have to fix things. I didn't have to be responsible for the other people in my life. If they weren't happy, I could let them be unhappy. If they were happy, I could share their happiness, but I didn't have to rescue them. It was just such a new concept for me. It was freeing, but it also terrified me because what it meant is that if I'm not responsible for all of you, I'm responsible for me. And the rest of the steps help me do that. So the second step says, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. I really believe that when I walked into that very first Al-Anon meeting, I believed that those people maybe could help me with my issues. I was newly divorced, just several months before I went to my first meeting, and I didn't have an alcoholic or an ex-husband or anybody else left at the house to blame for my problems. It was me. I didn't have to go over that hurdle of saying, geez, maybe I have an issue, because I was the only one left to blame for my issues. I think a lot of people come into Al-Anon and they want to blame the alcoholic or they want to blame somebody else. And if they have somebody to blame, they're very convenient to have around. I just didn't have one. I was alone, and so it was easy for me to get focused on the fact that if I had a problem, I better be the problem, because then I had a solution. If somebody else is my problem, I don't have any solution. And so I was really glad that that group was there to give me some answers.
So just to finish up on step 2, if you ever notice the 4th chapter in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is called We Agnostics. There's a reason it's in there. And I didn't understand this, but I didn't really understand the whole agnostic atheist believer thing, and it was explained to me very simply. An atheist is a person that doesn't believe and can't be convinced. A person of faith is a person that trusts that which they trust. And an agnostic is a person that affirms a belief in God and then does things their own way. And I was an agnostic. If you ask me, yeah, I believe in God. If you say, are you going to trust Him with anything? Abso-frickin-lutely not. and if I didn't tell you the truth, I showed you the truth. Remember that watching? So we're still on the second step. Third? Okay.
Oh, we'll run out of time.
Oh, we don't want to run out of time. They might throw something. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. And I think probably the most important thing for me, and I think a lot of folks that I've talked to, is that squiggly line, as we understood Him. This was the first place for me that I did not get defensive or offended about when people said God. And the reason was because they were always asking me, not telling me. You know what I mean? They said, if you just have a willingness to believe that something makes the sun come up and down, we'll accept that. That was pretty good for me. I'd always been in places where they said, you got to believe this, you got to do this is what we do here. And I didn't really like that. You said, can you get behind anything? Is there anything that you believe can help you with this addiction? And I'm thinking now, well, yeah, maybe. Good. Don't push it, because I ain't that sharp anyway, And I got to turn my will and my life over to this, whatever there is, something. And, I'm an alcoholic, You give me ABCs and I'll complicate the hell out of it. It'll be Einstein here in a second. They said, turn my will and my life. My will's what I want. My life's what I do. I'm going to try to live the way I believe God wants me to. The God I believe in. And live the way I believe that God wants me to live. Tall order, but I got hopefully a little bit of time to do that now. So you're...
And for me, I had been brought up in a very religious home, so I had all these ideas of very black and white thinking about what God was. And so, I had kind of that get-you God, and I didn't really want to turn my will and life over to the get-you God. So, going to Al-Anon meetings and just listening to people share about the God of their understanding, I started stealing people's God. If you talk about your God and it was like, wow, that sounds great. That's a great idea of what God is. I'd steal it and add it to mine. And, so my ideal of what God is, that caring, loving, cares about me intimately, God has shown Himself throughout my years in Al-Anon now, but it was like my concept kept growing. I was willing to keep an open mind to say, my concept of God doesn't need to be so black and white. He doesn't need to be in this square box like my parents taught me he had to be, or the church, or whoever. I could really decide who I wanted as my God. And so I love that. I love that about Al-Anon. And so my concept just continues to grow. And I think the grace that He gives to us and the grace that I see Him give it to people throughout the program has just continued to grow as the years have gone by. And so that's been a blessing. And then the fourth step said, made a decision to turn will and life, made a searching for fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the big book talks about making a resentment list. Well, I'm an Al-Anon. What can I tell you? I was way too nice to be resentful. I did not have resentments, thank you very much. And so my sponsor had me cross out in my big book the word resentment and write hurt. And I made a list of the people that had hurt me, and I started writing, and boy, it just flowed out. Because I could get people that hurt me, I didn't see that I was just crazy enough that I was really resentful. And so as the fourth step went, and as I did my fifth step, I could see how those resentments had really built up. Things that I was writing down people from years ago that had hurt me. Obviously, I didn't let it go. Obviously, it was a resentment. But I was just way too nice to have those resentments. My sponsor said, work on it, at least 15 minutes a day, no more than 2 hours a day, so you don't get overwhelmed, but at least 15 minutes a day, because this isn't going to be a long-term project here. We want to get it done. And I really, the people that I sponsor, I try to be sure that they don't hang on to that step very long. Once I started writing, that step wasn't stuffed anymore. I'd stuffed it for a long time. Now it's clear out in the open, black and white on paper, and I didn't want to get stuck there. And I think we lose a lot of people because we let them hang around on it too much. I had to keep moving. And, she assured me that there was nothing I was going to write down that didn't already have a word for it. I hadn't been that creative in my insanity. But, I just have to tell you, of all the AA leads I've heard, I've been around, it'll be 21 years next month in Al-Anon. I've got a lot of time in AA meetings. And, you guys did all your crazy shit drunk. I did it sober, okay? That's how crazy and sick I was. And, I wish I had the excuse that I was just, in a blackout, some of the things I've done. Unfortunately, I was just really that sick. So.
And just to close up on the fourth and start on the fifth, it does say a resentment list, but please, I've heard that, the fourth step is a resentment list. It's not. It's clearly not. There's directions in the big book, and those directions are the spiritual directions that we get that allow grace to come into our life, that allows us to be free of our addiction and go on. It's in there. My opinion has to be here. Those of you that have opinions, it has to be here, or I don't fit. You know your tradition, so. So the fourth also says I take a look at flaws, sexual inventory, and fears. It says now I get down to causes and conditions and I get honest about them and I'm willing to share them. So on the fifth, that's what I do. I'm coming clean. They told me some things that did help that weren't in the books, and they said, your sick is your secrets. They said, get it all one time. The worst thing that can happen in cancer or tooth decay is you leave a little bit because you'll be back here and it won't be fun. So I tried to get the whole thing. I met my sponsor and I told him. I told him the whole thing. I didn't tell him my whole life story. I hear somebody, next 3 weeks we'll be doing this fifth step. I'm not showing up for that. About 3-4 hours, I'm getting not the highlights, but I'm getting the low lights. You know what I mean? I'm talking about my sickness. I'm talking about my resentments. I'm talking about the flaws. I'm talking about the fear that drives my ass. I'm talking about how I use sex to my own gratification, very much like alcohol and drugs. Mood altering. And I know that ladies do that too, that romance, that TV drama stuff, It's mood altering. So I shared that stuff, and I got to tell you what, that was one of the greatest feelings that I've ever had in my life. So I shared the truth about me, trusting my God, looking forward to the rest of the steps. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I was free. I don't know if that's when it came later, it came before then. But let me tell you what, I never had felt so clean and close to this thing you call God as at that moment that I left that fifth step. You want to do 6?
Then the big book talks about returning home for an hour. So when I hear people saying, my sponsor had me on a step a year or a step a month and it takes them frickin' forever, I would have been nuts if I would have had to wait that long to complete my step work, I'll just tell you. The big book says returning home for an hour. We get the book out. We review the first 5 proposals. Was I thorough? Did I miss anything? Have I done it thoroughly? And then am I really ready to let God remove these defects of character? And I'm always amazed when people are like, I'm not sure I want to get rid of that one. Really? After you do your 4th and 5th step, I couldn't imagine wanting to keep any of them. I'd already seen how they had hurt me and everyone else in my life. Why would I want to keep them? It's like Mike said, some of the things that I learned as a child or before Al-Anon, those defects of character kept me safe. I had sarcasm as a huge tool in my tool bag. And I used it to keep people at bay. I used it to hurt people that hurt me. But I got into recovery and that tool really was harmful. It was very harmful. I can't imagine wanting to keep it. So, really looking at it and saying, God, I am totally willing that you take everything. And then doing my 7th step and just asking to do that. The big book talks about that he will remove the defects of character that keep me from being able to serve him. Well, that means he may not take them all. Because some of my defects are just irritating to, me or my hubby or, a few people, but not necessarily keeping me from being able to be of service to others. And so, God in his time will remove all of my defects of character.
Well, 8 steps say, and I know you guys are all step people, that we made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them. And if you read on in the book, it says we have that list. When you get to the 8th step...
Can I interrupt for just a minute? No. This is my personal opinion. You can take it for what it's worth, but Al-Anon's, I hate the blueprint for progress. I think it's the worst piece of literature we have ever printed. Because you do 90-some pages of, it's like treatment center, psychobabble questions, and at the end of that 4th step worksheet, you don't have a list of the persons you've harmed. You have no list of the people that you owe amends to. You have no list of the people or the things that you need to make right. So, you might want to try the big book. Okay, sorry.
I didn't say that.
I know.
But the 8th step said, made a list of all persons we had harmed, became willing to make amends to them. And it says that you have your list once you get there. So when you get to the 8th step, half of it's done. The list came from your 4th. Remember the resentment you had? Those are the people that you're going to disregard their part and go to them with your hat in your hand and say, can I do an amends? You know, and I've been around here for a little while. I got to tell you, if you got a dictionary, amends and apology are 2 different words. They're not the same thing. And I'm going to do you a little favor. I'm going to tell you what that stuff is. If you were somebody's sponsor, I'd say, go tell me what it says. Apology is a verbal defense for actions taken. No one wants to hear my I'm sorry one more time, nor should they. I've wore I'm sorry out. But what they are looking for is for me to come to them and say, you know, I did this, I did this, I did this. Here's that. Is there anything else other than stop doing it anymore that I can do to straighten this out, and can we be okay? I want to make those relationships I've damaged right. If they say no, I leave them alone. But you know what? If they don't, maybe I can get that relationship back. And I think that's part of my God. So 9 is I go and I make direct amends to those people wherever possible. Wherever, not whenever. I've heard people actually read in our meetings, whenever. You know when whenever is for an alcoholic? Never. Never. This is a humbling step. It's a growth step. This is number 2, by the way, on the hotline. Remember 5, how I felt? If I ever thought there was a way of feeling better after 5, it'd be 9. And I went to people, and I knew who they were, and I knew what I did, and I said, can we meet at the McDonald's near your home? I'd like to speak to you. I didn't bias the situation by telling you why I was meeting. And when we met, I said, you know, I've done this to you. And I'm sorry about it. And that $50 that I took, here's the $50. And I'm going to try not to be a thief anymore. And I'm wondering, does that straighten us out? And you know what? What comes to me after that doesn't matter, because the book says I've done this. I've straightened this relationship out. I hope to do this one, but I did this one for sure. And I go through those things. And I get every one. And it's not whenever, it's wherever. Okay. 11.
You want to do 10? Okay, 10th step. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. The thing that really is irritating to me is that if Mike is a jerk and I don't out-jerk him, it's amazing to me how quickly he will come back and say, you know, I was really a jerk, I'm sorry. You know, we need to start over, we need to do something. I'm not nearly as good at that as he is. I hate to admit that, but it's true. But I love the 10th step because it gives me an opportunity to review my day and not have to build up crap on my side of the street. You know, those crap piles get to stink after a while, and so if I keep them cleaned up on a regular basis, I don't have to go back and clean up these huge messes. Should I do 11 too? Okay, go. Okay, go for it. All right.
11 says, sought through prayer and meditation. How? Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God. Squiggly writing again. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Most of the drunks here know praying only. We have to have that discipline because we're the people that barter and beg. Now we have directions. I am to pray for God's will in what He wants me to do as opposed to mine. The best guy in the world to me ever said, you know, he wanted to do God's will, you know, not his will. And that's a good lesson for me. So how I seek, well, real quick on this one, we know now at this point that all good relationships are based on communication, right? If you go as an ex-guy in the field, if you go to a person and you take a survey about why relationships or marriages don't work, it's a lack of communication. What that means is there's no talking, and there's no listening, there's no communication. We don't get it. We're not on the same page. It ain't Mars and Venus. We're not talking, okay? And that's exactly the problem I had with my God. Prayer is I'm talking. Meditation is I'm listening. I am talking and I'm quieting down to listen. And that's how I improve my conscious contact. And you know, I got another thing that works for me, and I didn't ever understand it, is this. I have a thing that I call God, and it's called my conscience. And let me tell you why I believe that. My conscience in my life has always been, when I'm getting ready to do the foul, ugly, wrong thing, my will, there's this little bird called a conscience that says, Mike, don't cut him off. Mike, don't say that. Before, I drank over or I pushed and stuffed that voice down. Now I try, it says intuitively, I try to listen to that. That's right. They may be in a hurry. I don't have to be. They may be in a foul mood. Remember, to the drunks, we know that it says, I must put more power, more value on my spiritual relationship than anything else. And that means how bad I want to cut you off and follow you to the parking lot and beat the hell out of you. Right? So for me, I'm trying to improve my relationship by talking and listening to God.
And then also on the 11th step, we so often we say, well, I don't know what God's will is. Well, I know a whole list of things that His will is not. So if I just try to focus on those and don't do those, how much closer am I to His will? I also love it in the Big Book when it says, when during the day we relax and take it easy when agitated or afraid, not if. The Big Book knew that we were going to be screwed up during the day. And it encouraged me to take it easy, relax, and say many times a day, Thy will be done. Because we're then in much less danger of fear and resentment and hurt. What the program gives me is that peace, that serenity. When my head and my body are in the same place at the same time, when I'm not racing ahead, worrying about tomorrow or resenting the past, if I just stick with today, that's what the program gives me. And the 11th step is that working on that relationship to let God be in charge. If I'm in charge, we're on a wreck. We're in big trouble. And 12 is what Mike and I really have had a great blessing in our life. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, we carried this message to others. If you would have told me before I married Mike that my life would be, never knowing whose feet would be under my table or who would be staying at my house or who would call in the middle of the night, I would have said, no, thank you. And I can't imagine a more wonderful life. That we both sponsor people. We both are very passionate about this program because it's changed our life. It's just changed our life. We have the benefit of being able to work with other people. I think it's so fun because when we first sponsor somebody, they're like, oh, well, I don't want to call you if it's too late, or, I'm sorry, I'm calling you. And then finally they get through their step work and they're sponsoring somebody there and they're like, oh, well, my gosh, I get it now. I get that when I call my sponsor gets as much as I do. And that's what the blessing's been.
Yeah, and remember, I believe that we do the first 11 so that we're fit to do the 12th. And I got to tell you guys something, and it is my opinion, and I really don't care if you agree or not. This is not, nor was it ever, a selfish program. I'm so sick of hearing that. Anyone that has an argument with that, just come on up here. I got my book, and I will point out to you at least 10 distinct places that said we are servers, that we think of others, that we help others. I was a totally selfish and useless human being. And I think it was God's will for me to allow me to become an alcoholic, to give me the tools and give me the grace so that I might be able to share that with other people. And I believe as an Al-Anon, I have that same responsibility. I'll tell you the truth. Usually it's easier. Alcoholics I meet, you're already here. The Al-Anons are out there a lot of times. The mothers and the sisters and the brothers and the dads that I go golfing with or I see at work, and I'm able to share a message. I don't know what that means to you, but I do this there, and it seems to help me and some other folks. Maybe that would help you. And that's all I got to do. I got a friend, he says, you know what I am? I'm the pizza delivery guy. I'm going to bring you the pizza. You're going to pay for it. Whether you eat it or throw it out is your business. That's between you and God. But I'm bringing the pizza. And I want to bring the pizza. And I want to make sure that the message is pure. And the only way I know how to do that is if it's this. There's no opinion. I must agree with the book or I am not reconciled to the book, recovery, or you. It's not my opinion. And I would warn you not to take what you like and leave the rest. If you're anything like me, you'll take all the stuff that hurts, all the stuff that makes you grow, and you'll leave that for the social thing, the fellowship. And a lot of people, I think, die in the fellowship. They never die working the program. What our life is like today, I'll start that and then you can finish. How's that? I firmly believe that I'm probably the most blessed human being on the face of the earth for a number of reasons. I am a guy that's received a gift from God, and that is a sacred gift to start over. I know a lot of people that beg for an opportunity to start over. I got it, and I want to make good on it. I actually probably have what I have in spite of me, not because of me, as hard as I might try. The God of my misunderstanding awes me. When I can stop and think about how God has treated this drunk, I don't get it. Because, see, I'm carnal and I'm small-minded, and I try to put God in that box of my mind, and He's so much bigger and greater and more loving than that I can't believe it. And I'll tell you something that I'll share with you. One of the ways that I can't go backwards, be self-pitying, is that I look at this woman and I look at the sons that I have, and let me tell you what, if He didn't love me, I wouldn't have them. Let me tell you that right now.
We'll be married 20 years in March. We got to attend our oldest son's wedding last Friday night, and it was just beautiful. A lot of our recovery family was there, and we just are so blessed that we can laugh, we can have fun. We are very passionate. When we fight, we really fight, and people around us get to see that too. And it doesn't bother me, because they also see a lot of passionate love between us too. And so, it's like Mike said, if you want to know how we're doing, come visit. Yeah. Really, because that's where the proof is in the pudding. This program works. If you're sitting in these rooms and you're miserable, try it the Big Book way. Try it our way. The steps work if you're willing to just open yourself and use them. And then, the maintenance is 10, 11, and 12 that keeps us sane. So, well.
We wanted to thank you and congratulate you on 31 years. That's not a small thing. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart that you've allowed us, even on our little virgin voyage here, to talk the ears off of your head. We really are appreciative of being a part of this group, and we wish you continued success. And if there's any time that Linda or Mike Conway can help you, please don't hesitate to ask. We're only as good as the actions that we'll put up there. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
We'll pass.